Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Yesterday, we were discussing Pope Pius XII's role with Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the Second World War, this cozy Antichrist relationship between the United States government and the Vatican during a time of global inquisition, global crusade, and trying to expose some of the lies, some of the deception, some of the brainwashing that we've all been subject to since the Second World War, and coming to the realization that it wasn't what it appeared to be. It was all about religion. It was all about creating a global religion, a global government, a global social and economic system. It was all about persecuting the quote-unquote heretics as defined by Roman Catholic canon law. And the papacy conducted this crusade with the help of the Jesuits and with the help of the kings of the earth, including the King of the United States of America, Franklin Roosevelt. We're reading and discussing the book, The Global Vatican, by former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See, Francis Rooney. It's an inside look at the Catholic Church, world politics, and the extraordinary relationship between the United States and the Holy See. Remember, in our reading and discussion of the book, The Ark and the Dove by J. Moss Ives, and it was even referred to in this book, The Global Vatican, that John Carroll, the first Jesuit bishop of the United States back in the colonial period, begged and pleaded with the Pope to stay out, make himself innocuous, make himself silent, stay out of American affairs, or the Roman Catholic Church is going to be destroyed. Vastly outnumbered by Protestants during the colonial period, there was only one Roman Catholic colony, and it was not allowed to practice Roman Catholicism at the time of the founding of this country. John Carroll, the Jesuit priest, implored the papacy, if the Roman Catholic Church is going to survive, you must stand down. You must stay out of our business. These Protestants are not going to tolerate it. We are in danger of our lives. The Church in America, the Roman Catholic Church in America, is in danger of annihilation if there's any interference from the papacy. Look what we have today. A Roman Catholic admitting. This book constitutes an admission that the papacy is intimately in bed with the government of the United States. How far Rome has come in America since the colonial period. And I hope this is sinking into my listeners. We face a long forgotten enemy, an enemy that we've been cozied with for 250 years, and now they've taken over the ship. They now dictate foreign and domestic policy for this country. We need to return to Protestantism. We need to protest this unholy relationship, this Antichrist relationship that the government of the United States has with the Vatican, with the papacy, the Antichrist of the Bible. This book constitutes an admission. We're talking about the relationship and the dealings between Pope Pius XII and the government of the United States. Now listen, we'll pick up where we left off yesterday, the last full paragraph on page 86 if you're following along in your own copy of the book. And I hope you've availed yourself comprehending the importance of this discussion and purchased a copy of this book. It's widely available, and I hope more than anything, people, when they read this book, they have a little Protestant understanding when they read this book. And that's why I'm reading this book on the air and making these Protestant comments to it. Most Americans today, being ecumenicalized, if that's a word, having long since forgotten that Protestantism based its understanding on the fact that the papacy is the Antichrist of the Bible. That's been forgotten. That understanding needs to be restored, and that understanding helps to understand what this book is really saying. Without a Protestant understanding, without a Protestant mindset, this book might seem innocuous. But it's an admission. It's a confession. And why would Rome, when it was so careful back in the colonial period not to upset the Protestants, why are they now so bold to boast about their influence and control of the American government? Because there's no Protestantism left. Protestantism has left the building. They now own Washington, D.C., lock, stock, and barrel because there's no protest. I mean, you can't really blame the Roman Catholics of this country for doing what Roman Catholic canon law commands them to do, is to make every man, woman, and child subject of the Roman pontiff. You can't blame them for putting that into practice if there's no protest. You're going to see the Second World War was literally mounting up an entire nation to go to war against the enemies of the Roman Catholic Church. That's what the First and Second World Wars was. He says, sometimes lost in the controversy surrounding Pope Pius XII and the Holocaust, and we'll get to the Holocaust in a moment, is the fact that the war years marked an important turning point in relations between the Holy See and the United States. A turning point? A turning point? He says, over the course of his papacy, Pius XII developed closer ties to America than any previous pope. Indeed, these ties were well established before he became pope. In the fall of 1936, then Cardinal Secretary of State Pacelli, the future Pope Pius XII, had become the highest-ranking Vatican official to visit the United States. That's right, the future Pope came to the United States, a Protestant country. No protest. Pacelli's lengthy journey was covered with great fanfare in the American press. Would that be a Protestant press or a Catholic press? Great fanfare? If it was a Protestant press, it would be condemning this prelate, this highest-ranking Vatican official under the Pope, to be a representative of the Antichrist of the Bible. A man and an institution of which the United States should have no dealing whatsoever. But no, the press covered his journey throughout America with great fanfare. His every move was detailed and dissected. Why, they were examining the future Pope Pius XII as though he were God in the making. Yes, the future pontiff just scratched his nose. I wonder what that means. Isn't he so fair, so articulate, so powerful, so glorious, so holy? Your Eminence. I mean, it's just the press worship the guy. That's what he's saying. He says Pacelli's lengthy journey was covered with great fanfare in the American press. His every move detailed and dissected. What if there had been a little Protestant press? Do you think he would have been so detailed as to every movement and every word and every gesture that he made? I mean, the mind control just was unopposed. You know, that's how your impressions are fashioned, is by how the press covers a certain individual, whether it's positive or negative. You base your opinions on the opinion of the press. So what was your opinion supposed to be about this this Cardinal Secretary of State of the Vatican, Pacelli, the future Pope Pius XII? Why? You followed his every gesture. Great fanfare. So what are you supposed to think of this? If the American press lauds the person, deifies the person, it's mind control. Where was the Protestant press? You see how we're conditioned? Never mind what the Bible says. What does the press say about this man? It says he traveled 8,000 miles during his month-long stay, including a 5-day, 7-city, coast-to-coast airplane excursion. The highlight of his trip was a meeting with Franklin Roosevelt, President of the United States. The height of his trip in the United States was that he met with the president. That's the height of the trip. The highlight of the trip was a meeting with Franklin Roosevelt at the president's family estate in Hyde Park, New York. Well, at least he didn't meet him at the White House. Okay? Franklin Delano Roosevelt's not going to meet the Antichrist, the future Antichrist, at the White House. That might wake up too many slumbering Protestants. So we'll just have a private little get-together at the Roosevelt family estate in Hyde Park, New York. The Protestants won't care about that. We're just having tea and crumpets. We're not going to talk about anything important. Or at least nothing that they need to know about. The highlight of the trip was a meeting with Franklin Roosevelt at the president's family estate in Hyde Park, New York on November 5th, 2 days after Roosevelt was elected to his second term. Do you suppose the Vatican had anything to do with his re-election? You suppose? I mean, after all, the Bible says he reigneth over the kings of the earth. It might just as well say he elects them and removes them as he sees fit. Franklin Delano Roosevelt just won the election. One of his first guests at his private residence was, the Cardinal Secretary of State of the Vatican, the right-hand man of the Pope. I wonder if that's why Barack Obama's telephone was ringing the moment he swore in as President of the United States, and it was the Pope on the other end congratulating him. Oh, by the way, Franklin Roosevelt, in case you didn't know, it was a 33rd degree Freemason. Secret society. Right? And we know from the god of Freemasonry, Albert Pike, in his Bible of Freemasonry called Morals and Dogma, that Freemasonry is the worship of Satan. Makes no bones about it in his book. And we also know from Jesuit sources the Jesuit general, whose name escapes me at the moment, simply admitted that the Jesuits have many multiplying agents throughout the world. And that Freemasonry is if you can understand it this way, Freemasonry is an auxiliary organization to the Jesuits. Does that make sense? While the vast majority of Freemasons don't have a clue what the organization's all about, and they're intentionally kept ignorant so that they might be publicly visible and doing good works and charitable stuff, community service stuff, and putting a good face on Freemasonry. At the heart of Freemasonry is Jesuitism. They helped the Jesuits. And what's most diabolical about Freemasonry is it's an organization that can recruit Protestants to serve a diabolical purpose without their understanding, without their knowledge. Roosevelt was an oath-spitting Freemason, 33rd degree. He was a Luciferian, serving the Jesuits. And here he is meeting with this Cardinal Secretary of State of the Vatican. He says, arranged with the assistance of prominent American Catholics such as Joseph P. Kennedy, that is the father of John F. Kennedy, and Bishop Francis Spellman, a young auxiliary bishop of Boston at the time, the visit in itself was a challenge to diplomatic protocol. It's a real touchy thing to get the Pope together or to get the President of the United States together with a future Pope when we have a constitutional wall of separation between church and state and a non-establishment clause in the Constitution that forbids the government from acknowledging any particular religion. But here we have the highest ranking elected official in the United States meeting secretly. There's no other way to describe this. Meeting secretly with a future pope during a time of war. No protest. He says, with no formal relations between the Holy See and the United States, no official meeting between a Cardinal Secretary of State and a sitting American president could occur. Right? No formal relations then existed between the Holy See and the United States. No official meeting between the Cardinal Secretary of State and the sitting American president could occur because there was no diplomatic relationship. The government was prevented from acknowledging the Vatican. Constitutionally, it was unworkable. Constitution still meant at least a little something back then. At least they paid it lip service. Never mind that the Pope is together with the papacy running a crusade all over Europe and about to involve Protestant blood and treasure in a crusade. He said the ingenious solution to this well, very, very touchy meeting, the ingenious solution was to have the president's mother invite the cardinal to an informal, off-the-record luncheon with the president. That's all right. We can get around the Constitution. Mom, call the Pope. Tell him to send his representative. I'll meet him in private at the house. We'll get together and discuss the details of our upcoming crusade. And the American people will just overlook it because it's not an official meeting. It's not at the White House. And it's my own personal residence. And then, I can have whoever I want. No problem. Thanks, Mom. While the precise topics discussed by the future Pope and the newly re-elected president, yuck, over lunch at Hyde Park were not revealed, it is generally supposed that the president solicited Roman Catholic Church backing to keep Italy out of any future war. I think it had all to do with war strategy. We got a Jesuit-run Freemason meeting the top dog at the Vatican. They're about to do a crusade, and they're not talking about tea and crumpets, people. They're skirting around the Constitution to make sure this meeting takes place, so they're doing it as though it was a private get-together to keep the press at bay, to keep the Protestants at bay, to keep the Catholics, well, in the know for as much as they're allowed to know. Well, certainly they've got the discretion to keep their mouth shut when the representative of the Vatican, when the representative of the Pope is meeting privately with the president of their country. What do you suppose they talked about? It says that they supposed that the president was soliciting Roman Catholic Church backing to keep Italy out of the war. That may very well have come across the table. It might very well have happened. But what else did they talk about? And should they be talking about anything? I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I know who the Antichrist is. And his representative was talking to the president of my country. Privately, in secret, off the record, about a war. Come on, where's the common sense in America? Where's the Protestant sense in America? Roosevelt also wanted church support in muting the radio personality Father Charles Coughlin, whose 30 million listeners, that's right, Roman Catholic frocked priest, Father Charles Coughlin, had a weekly radio program indoctrinating the American citizenry, Protestant and Catholic alike. 30 million listeners tuned in each week to hear anti-communist, which is okay, because the church was against communism, so to speak, anti-Semitic, and increasingly anti-Roosevelt tirades. Now, which of the three do you think would really bothered Roosevelt? I mean, there has to be anti-communist rhetoric going on in the press because they got to have this crusade. They got to demonize the parties. Otherwise, there's no energy for a war. There's no support for the war. They had to make communism seem like the great red boogeyman. And also anti-Semitic language by Father Coughlin. Why? Well, that's not a problem. Is it? No, it was anti-Roosevelt tirades that he went into. And you can't have anti-Roosevelt tirades when the president needs support to carry on the American part of the crusade. And it says, for Pacelli, the meeting was an opportunity to warn Roosevelt about the dangers of communism, yada, yada, yada. Still a greater concern to the Roman Catholic Church than fascism. And it says, looking back at the lunch from the perspective of 1943, Roosevelt would recall with amusement that the Cardinal Secretary of State seemed obsessed with communism. The Secretary of State of the Vatican was obsessed with both communism and fascism. They were their war partners. And Roosevelt was too. It's all public play acting. All the world's a stage. Now I wonder what they really talked about. My guess is they got right down to brass tacks how they were going to get the United States and Italy into the war. And what the outcome, the intended, the planned outcome of it would be. We'll be back right after these messages. You're listening to Inquisition Update on First Amendment Radio.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Okay, welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on First Amendment Radio. If you like Inquisition Update and you are benefiting from the information you receive here, please support Inquisition Update by supporting First Amendment Radio, who sponsors the program. And also, if you would like to contact me directly, you may do so by email. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. Now get a load of this next line. He says, Pacelli and Roosevelt also apparently broached the possibility of establishing diplomatic relations. Formal diplomatic relations. Acknowledged legal diplomatic relations between the Vatican and the United States government. But look, we're talking about a private, unconstitutional, clandestine, off-the-record meeting with the head of the United States and the assistant head, if you will, of the Vatican, talking about war strategy. Talking about your Protestant blood, your Protestant treasure, and how they're going to get you to commit both to conduct an unholy Roman Inquisition against Protestants, Jews, and Orthodox in Europe. And how are they going to do it without your knowledge? Because after all, anybody who in America who was told either by the president or the press or anyone else, even the Cardinal Secretary of State of the Vatican himself, if he got on the radio and said, we're going on a crusade, all you Protestants mount up, you know, turn in your gold and your silver and your blood and your guts. We're going to Rome, we're going to Europe, and we're going to smack old Nazi Germany and Mussolini, and we're going to just mop up. And while we're at it, we're going to kill a lot of Protestants. We're going to kill a lot of Orthodox. We're going to kill a lot of Jews. So you holy Roman crusaders in Protestant garb, put on your gear. We're going to town. You think anybody would have signed up? I dare say many Catholics wouldn't have signed up. And just remember, we're only just a few years away from the first Pearl Harbor that got this country into war. Roosevelt knew all about Pearl Harbor. And he knew it was just the ticket to get this country committed to a European war. We're going to be in this crusade come hell or high water. That was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's responsibility, to get this country in the war. Even his mother participated in this unholy relationship. His mother invited the Cardinal Secretary of State to come visit her for tea and crumpets. And by the way, old President Roosevelt will be here. Pacelli and Roosevelt also apparently broached the possibility of establishing diplomatic relations. They were already having relations. All they wanted to do was get married. They were already committing spiritual fornication. They just wanted to get married. Are you following my line? Why bother with full diplomatic relations between the United States and the Vatican when they've been corroborating all along? Can I do the math for you? I'll help a little bit. The only reason they want formal diplomatic relations is to test the mettle of the Protestants, to beat the Protestants into the ground, and then to have these formal diplomatic relations where the press is sometimes invited and the papers report on these things, and to use all that information as cover for the secret negotiations like this one right here at Hyde Park. That's the only reason they need formal diplomatic relations with the Vatican, to provide cover for the secret relationship that has existed between the hierarchy of the American government, the Roman Catholic hierarchy of the American government, and the Antichrist of the Bible. You see, in formal diplomatic relations, they can have their photographs taken, their official statements made. That indoctrinates the people. The people go back to sleep while the secret negotiations continue. The secret war strategy continues behind closed doors in the whorehouse in Rome. That's all formal diplomatic relations are. That's all the service that Francis Rooney provided as ambassador to the Holy See, was public fodder. Public BS as cover for the secret negotiation, the secret war strategies between the United States and the Vatican. Francis Rooney made a career out of deceiving the American people. I mean, look, they're sitting at the table at Mom's house in Hyde Park in an off-the-record discussion during a time of war. What do they need formal diplomatic relations for? To provide cover. How's that for math? Mathematics, it's a wonderful thing. All right, this was alluded to in a letter Pacelli sent to Joseph Kennedy. There's the Kennedy family again. In April 1938, quote, "Ever in my personal judgment, there's no better opportunity than this for trying to carry on the plan that we had thought of while in America and that I know is among your aims," Pacelli cagily wrote, meaning the creating formal diplomatic relations with the Vatican. He said the quote-unquote planned provision, unquote, would give the American government, quote, a direct source of information from a straight and intimate connection with the Vatican circles, unquote. Look, this open relationship, were it to take place, well, would just open the doors for American intelligence. There's no greater intelligence source on the planet than the Vatican. When all other diplomatic sources fail in time of war, the Vatican is left neutral, supposedly, and we still get fresh, hot information. And if we have formal diplomatic relations with the Vatican and the United States, you can have that hot, fresh information, which is absolutely necessary in the time of crusade. You, America, the great crusader for the papacy, must have fresh and hot intelligence straight from the Vatican. And you get that with full, formal diplomatic relations. What do you think they were getting in Hyde Park at Mom's house? Fresh, hot intelligence from the only quote-unquote trusted source of intelligence, the Vatican. Yeah. And the world bought it. He says less important than who said what at the luncheon is that it occurred. Here, Francis Rooney's going to admit this meeting was a miracle that it ever happened. He says an American president meeting with a high Vatican official gave a tangible and clear signal of a fundamental shift in the relations between the United States and the Holy See. You know what the shift was? The shift was that America became Catholic. It was Protestant, but there was no protest, so by default, it became Catholic. That was the default. That was the shift. That's the only way the meeting could ever have taken place. Protestantism was dead. Now there's a fundamental shift in the relations between the United States and the Holy See because Protestantism died. Protestantism committed futurist suicide. Do I have to go through futurism again? Or do you know it now? Historicism, biblical Christianity says the Pope's the Antichrist. The papacy is the Antichrist. Every Pope is the Antichrist. Okay? It's a succession. I mean, after all, Satan can't manifest himself in the world in just one individual. He'd have to live over 2,000 years old. That doesn't happen in humanity. So it has to. The Satan has to be represented by an office, occupied by mortals, to serve as his vicar. Pope Pius XI at the time was the current Antichrist. Pope Pacelli would eventually be the next Antichrist. Perpetuity. There's a reason why the Vatican has survived so long. They boast themselves of being the oldest institution in human history. Of course, second only to the body of Christ. Remember, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob long preceded the Holy Roman Pontiff. It's lasted for 2,000 years, deceiving the world and ruling over the kings of the earth for 2,000 years, engaging the world in war and bloodshed and lies and corruption and you name it. And it still goes on today, but there was a fundamental shift in the relationship between the United States and the Holy See when the President of the United States could meet secretly with the highest-ranking Vatican official short of the Pope, and nobody protested. See what happens when you just keep your mouth shut and try to get along? The fox just walked into the hen house and decided he owned it. He said that shift was soon reflected in the diplomatic activity, albeit still unofficial, which escalated after Pacelli's visit. No protest? We're going for broke, baby. No protest. The Protestants are asleep. The hen house is wide open. It's ours. Pick your chicken. The feast is on. Look at all this resource, financial resources, human resources, material resources, every kind of resource. It's ours now. No protest. The Cardinal Secretary of State just met privately with Roosevelt. Nobody protested. They didn't put a white flag on the mast of the ship, but they've nonetheless fired all their guns and emptied their magazines. There's no protest. The country is ours by default. Now we got to get busy. We got a crusade to fight. And by the way, while we're at it, we're going to have formal diplomatic relations. Never mind the Constitution, never mind the Bill of Rights, never mind separation of church and state. There's no protest anymore. The Constitution isn't worth the piece of paper it's written on. We're going to take over. And we're going to take these slumbering Protestants and put them in the front lines of this crusade. And they're going to go too. Because they all just want to wear that beautiful uniform. Salute smartly, turn on their heel, and follow their gun to the battlefield. See what happens when you trust Antichrist? You become cannon fodder. Of course, that's better than, you get to die with dignity in a war. Yeah, right. They've taught us. They've brainwashed us with that. You die with dignity in a war, fighting for freedom. I guess that's better than roasting in the Inquisition. But in the Inquisition, you don't kill innocent people. You just die yourself. You don't have to go to your grave with a guilty conscience of killing people that were just as ignorant and brainwashed and indoctrinated as you were. Less important than who said what at this luncheon is that it even occurred. An American president meeting with a high Vatican official gave a tangible and clear signal of a fundamental shift in relations between the United States and the Holy See. That shift was soon reflected in the diplomatic activity, albeit still unofficial, which picked up after Pacelli's visit. At first, the United States State Department looked to the Vatican as a possible peacekeeper in Europe. Yeah, all that in a bag of chips, right? Hoping that the church would influence the Italian government. That's Mussolini, the fascist, the atheist fascist. You're going to count on the Roman Catholic Church to influence Rome's inquisitor. They're going to influence the Italian government, which might in turn moderate the German government's aggression. And when the papacy wants nothing but aggression, Roosevelt wants nothing but aggression. You see the brainwashing? See how the Vatican works? Hey, it's important to know this stuff. It deceives the whole world. Wouldn't you like to know the truth about what deceives the whole world? Wouldn't you like to be the exception in the world? Wouldn't you like not to be deceived? I tell you what, when you learn the truth, it sobers you up. You take your faith seriously. You take Christ seriously. You take the scriptures seriously. And you take history seriously. You take prophecy seriously. It's a reward that can't be summarized in words. They're going to make the Pope a peacekeeper. It's a Holy Roman Crusade. The Pope's running the thing. The Jesuits fomented the thing. Roosevelt is cooperating with it. So is Communist Russia. So is Fascist Germany. They're all working together. You can't have a war unless there are combatants. And if you're orchestrating the war, getting all of these differing sides ready to go to war against one another, why, you'd get caught if you told everybody you fomented it, so you have to pretend to be a peacemaker. The whole world has bought it for the last 2,000 years. Why not buy it now? Somehow the extermination of the Waldenses and the Albigenses and the Lollards and the Hussites and all the true Bible-believing Christians throughout history, well, that was making peace, wasn't it? Soaking the earth with the blood of the saints, well, that's how you make peace in the world, right? The papacy admits all of those crusades and massacres and slaughters against true Bible-believing Christians. They boast about it, having done God's service by eradicating quote-unquote heretics, Bible-believing heretics off the face of the earth. And we're to suppose, after nearly 1,800 years of brutality against God's people in this country and in this world, that the papacy's not intimately involved in the Second World War. He's not the fomenter of the war. And we're going to believe he's a peacemaker. You can't get more deluded than to believe the papacy forms a peaceful role of anything in this world. This is a violent takeover over the throne of Almighty God. This war started in heaven, and it migrated to the earth when God cast him out and all his angels. Don't you think that the war that results on the earth might resemble exactly what took place in heaven? It's an attempt to overthrow God's throne on this, his footstool, the earth. And it's against his people. We're now living the war that took place in heaven. It's in your face every day. Shouldn't we learn to recognize it? Shouldn't we learn to call it what it is? And shouldn't we also, in defense of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Christ, condemn his antichrist counterfeit in Rome? Should we not expose that this man, no matter what name he goes by, Boniface VIII, Gregory VII, Pius IX, Benedict XV, Pius XII, or Francis I, is the vicar of Satan himself, the destroyer? Is it wrong to tell the truth? Is it hate speech to tell the truth? You know, that's how they're demonized. That's how they're going to demonize the Protestants. They're hate speakers. They're all the time condemning the papacy. They're just hateful. Is it wrong to hate genocide, religicide? Is it wrong to hate anti-Jew hatred, Roman Catholic anti-Jew hatred? Is it wrong to hate the crusades that the papacy's led for over 605 years through 83 consecutive popes against Bible-believing Christians? Is it wrong to hate that? Well, God doesn't hate. God is love. The Bible says God loved Jacob and hated Esau. Why did he hate Esau? Because Esau did like the Protestants and gave up their birthright for a scarlet-colored bowl of pottage. Roman pottage! At Vatican Council II. Gave up their Protestant birthright and went off and married a whore. Not of Israel, but of Rome. God had a dang good reason to hate Esau. Now, who's Esau today? And who is Jacob? One who thought so much of that birthright that he wrestled with the angel of the Lord all night long until the dawning of the day. And when the angel of the Lord finally disabled Jacob so that he could no longer fight, he clung to his garments and said, I won't let you go until you bless me. Jacob was the first Protestant. And guess who's got the birthright? Would Jacob give up his birthright? At Vatican Council II,